don't we start with Richard at the end and just introduce who you are, the staff, and we'll just come and go this way, and just for the benefit of Audrey, say your name and who you represent on the board, so she's got it right, and or speak, or you can do it. I'll tell you what. Let's not do it.
I've got a roll call.
Let's get as you do the roll call when you answer present, then say who you represent.
All right. You want me to call roll?
Yes.
William Opal.
Here, and I represent the senior citizens.
Alan Hutch. Kibish.
Alan, and I will say, Alan has a schedule conflict, and he's written, and he's one of the ones that can't make you most of the days that we can do so. He's a good member, but we miss him, and so.
Brandon Lamar.
Here, Vice Chair, disagree.
Justin Sweet.
Yep, here, representing the college football organization.
Kevin Strotz. Lawrence Abelson.
Here, District 5.
Marianne Long.
Here, Area 7.
Robin Navarro.
Present Area 2.
Ron Esquivel.
Here, Area 6.
Sue Choi.
Here, business community.
Tony Vaughn.
Here I represent students, and I wish Candace good luck in the 110.
Yeah, this is with us remotely. Richard Lorette.
Here, Richard Laird, Executive Director, Facilities and Construction Services.
Jesse Wayne.
Here, Chief Fiscal Services Officer, CFO.
And Alicia, and we have no members of the public present in the room. Are there any members of the public online in any way?
No.
And is the video on YouTube? Okay, so you are being broadcast, and they can see the slides. And we have Chip McCorkle here from.
I'm actually a member of the public. I'm a Pasadena resident
Okay.
and a contractor in the area.
Okay. So let's go ahead. If you have the agenda in front of you, are there any suggested modifications to the agenda? Are we okay with it as it is?
Okay.
Yep.
No comments from the public. We have the minutes in front of you for the September meeting. And so if you would look through those, I would like to note that the live stream noted at the top there goes back to a prior meeting when we had the briefing with the accounting firm, not to what we have here. So we should change that. And then I would like to, before the rest of you go to it, on page 4, under item 2, VP Jones shared the presentation introduced to the board shared the revised facilities master plan presentation. If you could insert that makes it read a little more clearly. And on page 6, at the top, under the I. Bailey presentation, Dr. Opal directed the committee members to review the information. I would like to substitute invited for the word directed. And then the rest of you. And then the other thing was we did at the end of the meeting talk about having a tour of the Seraphian Health Sciences building that's being completed, and that we didn't get the invitation to do that today, which we thought we would have, and it's not noted in the minutes, so we probably want to make a note of that under the proposed future items there, that was invited, but we weren't able to do that. Richard, the reason is?
There was a conflict with the trustees, and the college wanted the board of trustees to talk the building first before we opened it to the public. So we're going to be finishing up those blocks next week, so the invitation will be extended until after that is concluded.
So we're not part of the clergy, we're part of the public laity, and we will get to go into the church a little later. okay, fine. So the rest of you, do you have any corrections for the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I just have one comment on the
Yes.
minutes. I think the minutes are pretty accurate. I'm just kind of curious, for future purpose, the minutes, in the question and answers, can we document who asked the question and who answered it?
What's that?
Who asked the question? And right now, it's just document question and answer.
It's not reflected who the questioner was, no, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering for future purposes, can we document who answered it and who asked?
Okay, I don't think we could probably go back to that, or?
Yeah, I don't need that to
Okay.
go back, but for future purpose.
So note that Justin has suggested that we identify the question, who provided the question, maybe in parenthesis, and who gave the answer with a suggestion. And,
To Justin's point, were these answers provided during the meeting, or these be answers that would be provided after the meeting?
no, those are basically, most of the answers were provided by Candace
At the time.
at the time.
At the time.
And I thought they were pretty fulsome answers, I thought she did.
Well, that's why I thought maybe they were.
Yeah, no, there were a number of different people, I think all the questions had different persons asking.
And
We
it-
may have even had more questions than that, but we caught those, and I think they were all answered by Candace, unless some of you recollect differently.
that would be handy to know.
Yeah.
And the other question I had is, I looked, so I had a question or two. There are videos, this is recorded, there are videos online, yeah? I could not find them.
Correct, if you tap up at the top here where it says live stream, up on line 4 on the first page, then at page 3, see where it says live stream, YouTube.com live, and then the rest of it there. I click that, see what happens, and it's from the point of view of one of these two cameras. The camera's up above there on this west side, and they have the entire meeting. No, it must be down at the end because it catches the entire.
That's one right above.
Pardon?
They're everywhere.
Yeah. They seem to be from one point of view. And the audio's pretty good, and it's a YouTube, but note also that this is the incorrect entry at the top. So maybe what you could do is give us a list of our meeting dates where there's a live stream with, and check the links to them so that we can go back and look at any of those recordings, okay? And that one has actually Alicia's and Anna's presentation, which was mostly Alicia, talking at the September meeting, and it has basically your whole deal, including your slides, I think, on that. So if any of you want to go back and know how the audit's done, which was that question, that's it. But this is not the link for the minutes of the meeting that we have in front of us. Okay, so but there is such a thing.
Okay.
So if you want to see who asked,
No,
and who answered,
we're done.
but I don't know how to get, it's not, I thought it would give something,
Yeah.
that code number at the end. I don't know what it would be for any other meeting.
So I just wanted to, so when I go to the CDOC page, there's a very clear link to watch the live stream. There's a clear link to look at the agenda, but I don't see links to recordings of the prior meetings. So
Right.
it's maybe a suggestion that if there's a way to more clearly indicate on the page where the recordings are, if we want to go back and look, remember the public does, that would be helpful. Thanks.
Right.
But I'm good with the minutes.
Okay, so Brandon,
I'll second.
motion, your second, okay. And Larry seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, unanimously approved minutes. And so we now move to the facilities communication update. who's on for that? We talked about, as you saw in the minutes, the newsletter and the link to that. Is there a presentation we have on that?
No, there's no presentation per se, as I can give an update on the current project status.
Well, okay, so we'll just,
We can share the facilities update that we give to the board, but that's included not only bond projects, but capital outlay, scheduled maintenance. So there's a couple projects.
we'll come to, as I said, the facilities communication update, I believe, was I think we're going to
I
have.
can take that one, Dr. Opel.
Yes, Candace.
Sorry, I'm almost there, but our next, I just wanted to let you all know that the next facilities newsletter is going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks. So it's just to give you guys an update that some new stories related to the bond project as well as scheduled maintenance will be coming to your all's attention in 2 weeks. Jillian is currently working on it.
Okay, so you all got that. This item really has to do with the newsletter, which we talked about and reflected in the minutes here. And so Dr. Jones has told us we've got something coming from Jillian in the next couple of weeks. Okay, thank you. So now the action items, if we go on to that, we'll have the I. Bailey report from Alicia, and we've got a principal meeting for scheduling this today instead of later, is to hear that. And if you go to your package, it starts on page 8.
Dr. Opel, it's a separate packet.
Is it, oh, that's
Yeah,
a separate
it's a
thing,
separate
okay, you've got the separate, okay. You've got a thing on page 8, but then you've got the booklet here that has the draft financial report, which starts off with some spicy stuff, including a loss of $3 million or something, but so, let's move ahead and have Alicia review that report.
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight.
And Brandon will be, I'll let him lead the discussion on this, because you're the one who wanted us to meet now instead of later to get a grip on this, to see whether we needed to go elsewhere for formatting. So we expect you to be eagle-eyed on this. Okay.
All right. Well, as Dr. Opel noted earlier, myself and the audit manager, Anna, were here earlier in the year to meet with the committee, talk about what the audit looks like, and now we're kind of at the tail end. We're almost ready to issue our report. We'll probably issue it the first week or so of December. So it's in draft form right now for your review. But the bond audit, it's actually 2 different audits in this one report. We have an audit of the financial statements of Measure PCC, and then also the performance audit, and that's the compliance piece of the audit. So we'll go over the financial first, because it is first in your packet. All of the information, all the numbers in this report are prepared by management. We help them get it into this nice format. But the only thing that we really take responsibility for is our opinion, our audit opinion, which is on page 1. It's very long, but I'll give you the cliff notes of it. We gave an unmodified opinion over the Measure PCC financial statements. That's commonly referred to as a clean opinion. So it's the highest level of assurance that we can give, and it states that the financial statements prepared by management, free of material misstatement, free of material non-compliance, and they're in accordance with the accounting standards. So keep in mind, when we come in to do an audit, we might find issues and we might have audit adjustments. As long as management agrees to those adjustments, we can still issue that clean opinion. Pasadena received a clean opinion with no audit adjustments. So we didn't have to come in and propose any changes to their numbers in order to give our clean opinion, which is a good indication that throughout the year as you're getting financial information that it's accurate, because we didn't have to make changes to it to get it in accordance with the accounting standards. And then moving along on page 4, that's the start of the financial statements. Starts off with the balance sheet, which has the assets and liabilities of the bond fund at June 30, 2024. So So these numbers are a little older than maybe some of the more recent financial information that you guys have received, but our audits as of June 30. You can see that the bond had about 89 million in assets, primarily in investments held with the LA County Treasurer, and about 88.2 million left to spend as of June 30. On the next page, page 5, this is the financial statement. I think it's a little bit more interesting for the bond. We have the income statement essentially. So it shows the revenues and expenses of the bond fund. So we have revenues of about 200,000, capital expenses of 16.1 million for a total expense of 17 million for the bond. And then of course, the bonds were issued this year, so you'll see that money coming in. And that leaves you with your total left to spend of 88.2 million.
Could you go back and talk about that change in fair value investments?
Sure. So I mentioned earlier that the monies for the bond are held with the LA County Treasurer for investment. So during the year, we had $3.7 million of interest. At the end of the year, what the district is required to do under the accounting standards is recognize the fair value of those investments. So from an operational standpoint, the monies held with the treasurer are essentially at cost. The district puts money in, they can take the money back out. For accounting purposes, they want to know what that money is worth from a fair market value at the end of the year, and that's what this represents. It's showing that there's a $3.5 million fair market value loss. However, that loss will not be realized by the district. So if they were to withdraw all their money, they would not incur a loss of $3.5 million. So it's really just a book entry for presentation purposes, and not so much a loss that you've incurred that you're not going to get that money
So
back.
it's an unrealized loss?
Correct.
And what instruments is that loss in? Is it in equities or in bonds? Or you have to look later in the report there, a list of the kind of investments that you can make in what amount. And so what kind of things were provided this unrealized loss?
Yep. So the county treasurer has their own investment mix. It's really highly liquid investments. So really conservative growth. And that's what's really required by California law. The district has to invest these monies with the county treasurer under Ed Code. But you're going to see things like T-bills, money markets, commercial paper, so real short-term interest earning.
So does this reflect the fact that interest rate went up for a while, so the value of the existing bonds went down?
Correct.
Because they have a lower rate?
Yep, so you're getting those increased interest earnings, which is great because that's money that the district does in fact get to keep within the bond fund. But the downside of that is on a market basis, it's not worth as much with the rising interest rates.
So that means that they really, those two, the fact that we got more interest in the 3.7 minus the 3.5, in the sense those are almost the same, that means that the county treasurer is not getting very much more than we do in our local bank CDs. I mean, we get a certain amount of interest, but inflation and rates, the losses on the bonds offset that.
Yes, although again, you won't, these are unrealized and you will not realize them.
Right,
That's kind
okay.
of the kicker there. So you get to keep all that interest, but you're not gonna realize these losses.
Thank
Same
you.
way, one year we might have a gain and you won't get to realize those gains either, so it's.
And the other question I had was, I was thinking that what was the first tranche of funding that we got when we sold that first bunch of bonds? What was the total amount of that? I thought it was an amount more than this.
It was about 130 million.
130. So why is that not reflected here?
So this is the amount that is earmarked for construction for Measure PCC. With the issuance of the bonds, there was a couple things that happened. One is the district paid off old COP debt. So there's about 28 million in COP debt that was paid off with that. So essentially refinanced. And then another thing kind of required by law, any premium on the bonds actually goes towards the debt payment of the bonds and not towards capital construction. So this is the amount that's allocated.
So explain the COP. That's a way of of borrowing money ahead of the game when you're going to get it back. Is that what I remember somebody talking about that? Is it a certificate of participation?
Yes, and I believe the district uses it as a short-term financing to kind of bridge the gap before the bonds were ready to issue.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, because at that moment in time, the Serafian family received the go-ahead from the state to start construction and then retain that portion of funding that the state had committed to us. So we wanted to go ahead and take advantage of that.
So that was because we knew we had money coming in for the Serafian
So the,
billing from the state eventually, or did we, I'm trying to think back under the prior, when we, it sounded rather clever when they did it, maybe too clever, had the bond issue, Measure PCC, already passed when you undertook the certificate of participation, or did you take a flyer on that?
I believe at that time that we have not gained the voter approval yet.
Right.
Yeah, so then the COP was designed at that time to have a 3 to 5 year repayment. There's a freeze before we have to make a repayment.
So you borrowed against, so essentially you borrowed against a bond issue that had not yet been approved by the voters. And fortunately, the voters approved it, so now you were able to pay it off.
Well, it is in the anticipation of a future bond issuance. Yeah, we were.
You borrowed in anticipation of approval of a future loan.
Well, at the point, we have to, well, we couldn't borrow on those assumptions. Well, the district actually have to prove that we have the financial capability, even though if the bond will not come through, we still be able to repay the COP.
But also they had, after the Sacramento changed its mind about paying the full cost of the Serafian building, and Jack Scott and our prior superintendent had to go to Sacramento to lobby for it. They were fortunate enough to get the money. But we didn't have either, that hadn't been approved, and we hadn't yet had the bond issue approved, but we still did the certificates of participation, right?
The state was able to fund us based on the approval that happened a few years back. But unfortunately, since the approval from the state, costs had escalated quite a bit. So the state was not able to contribute towards the escalation of costs. So the district itself will have to cover those.
So my question to the auditor here on this, from my point of view, is since this is a statement of revenue and expense, why don't we show the whole $130 million that came down, and then show in terms of expenditures the payoff of certificate of appreciation? That's not participation, that's not mentioned here at all.
Oh, Dr. Earl, it's actually a timing difference because the issuance, when we issued in Series A, the $130 million, actually happened in the previous fiscal year. So the money came in the previous fiscal year, and the spending happened in fiscal year 23-24.
So this committee, though, in making its report saying that the money that came from the bond issue of $130 million is appropriately expensed, we haven't yet, this committee has not made a report yet. There wasn't anything to report last year, or we weren't here to do that. So, but we're accountable. We're supposed to be overseeing at this point the $130 million. The rest of it hasn't issued, so it doesn't matter. But the $130 million that was issued, we need to explain to our constituents and say that this has been properly handled. But how are we going to do that? Are we going to go back and include a prior audit in our report? How are we going to report that? How can we just report on 88 million?
Is there a report that was done from 23, 24? I know we didn't do one, but is there one that was done from 23, 24 that shows the 130 million?
No, the reason why is that is because in the previous year, it was only the money coming in, but there wasn't much money that's being spent. Yeah, the committee's responsibility is based on the money, the appropriateness of the money being spent, which happened in the 23-24 fiscal year. Yeah.
Now we'll get the answers.
Give a chance to sit down.
I was listening intently. I mean, Jesse's perspective in terms of it's a timing issue, and so we can kind of take a step back and figure out how we sort of adjust for that time.
I think that
piece.
in our report, don't you, Brandon, we do need to start, we're starting with we're be issuing the first report. We have to say $130 million in bonds issued, and
I think in the
but
annual-
88 billion, you know, we've got $42 million here.
One idea could be that in the, because remember, the auditor's report is based on sort of the fiscal boundaries. We could, in the annual report that you all publish, account for some level of like, statement related to the cost of the issuance, because that's also not included.
Yeah, I just
Because you
want,
have to produce an actual report yourselves related to the actual audit itself.
So from the auditor standpoint, you guys have, if I'm understanding right, you guys have to draft a report for a certain time frame. So anything outside of that time frame cannot be in your report.
Correct, so it's for a specific time frame, and it's also specifically for the bond construction fund. So a lot of the financing related to refunding the COPs is actually handled through the county fund that also pays the debt payments. That's outside of the scope of this specific audit. We look at that in the district-wide audit, but this audit from the state is only for the construction portion of it.
Well, my question is, under the authorization for the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, we're responsible for saying where the money in the bond went, right? So I think we have to say something about the whole 130 million, not just the construction facilities.
yeah, Dr. Bill, so I know this is a little bit confusing, so I've gone back. If you go to the other reports on page 9, they do start from 130, and then they show you, I mean, this is 108, which is a little bit confusing with the audit report 105, but you add back the interest of 3.73 is exactly where the audit report shows. So if we go by this summary of measure PCC, that's exactly what you were talking about.
Which is why Candace said we
Page
can do
9.
that in our annual report.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's the 130, and then minus the cost of issuance, which is 802,500, and then the repayment of cost, which is 2434, 6903, page 9. If you guys can, not in the audit report, but the other staff. Yeah, so that number matches with the audit act. It's just a bit confusing because that number 108 is including the interest, and then this one put the interest up there with the interest income. So that's why it's showing 105.
Okay, then if that's true, there was a lot of concern expressed on this committee in our prior meetings about whether the numbers in this summary statement provided by the staff are correct. So can we get a statement from the auditor that verifies the arithmetic in that first block there where we have the 130 minus the cost of issuance minus the COP and et cetera, so it gets us somewhere to the 88.
Maybe it could be included as a part of the note at the end of the, as a part of the.
Well, we don't know, I mean, that's an audit question, so.
Or are the rest of you who were concerned about having the numbers that are in these regular management reports unaudited, audited? Because that was a great expression of concern that you all made and why we wanted to know about the methodology and all this.
Yeah, agreed.
So do you want to forego that, or is there a way that we can get a verification of it? So do you care or do you not care?
I definitely think we need a narrative to go along with this, because the questions are going to be raised. And so we get ahead of it and we have it addressed in our report, starting with the initial bond amount, what happened to the money. So I think it would be good to have some narrative, but I understand it's not in the purview of the auditor report.
Can I, Bailey, go back, if we write such a statement, would you be able to review that for us and see that what we have written for public consumption is okay?
Yeah, I'd be happy to review a draft.
Because you would essentially be having to have a look back at other statements. I don't think there's any question that it's okay, but the question is, how do we know that?
And how's it gonna be perceived?
Right, how do we know that from an outside source, since the question was trust but also verify is sort of what we were doing. So can we get you to verify our statements when we make those in the report?
I'd be happy to look at the draft of the annual
Okay.
report and provide any feedback that I might have.
All right, okay.
So my question is that in your current contract though, to do that?
No, so we wouldn't have
So you
provided
would
an
have to-
opinion, but I would do it basically as a courtesy to review it for your.
Got it, okay.
I'm still a bit confused, I mean, when you say, Ed, Lily, to go back and review, are you reviewing these 24, 34, 6903 was in the spend on COP, or what are we auditing on that?
The repayment to COP.
Yeah, the repayment of the COP.
That this amount they have.
Right. Where, I mean, the question is, where did the 130, where did $42 million that got us down to the 88 we're hearing about now, where did it go? And you properly point out that the staff has probably, almost certainly, very accurately reported it on page 9, but the question is, with all the concerns about having an auditor look at it and say that it's not just our trust, okay? That's the issue that this committee had really bore down on before. So I think it's incumbent on us to do it right. Go ahead with your ongoing interruption.
Okay.
Just a question, so IPL is going to verify that these numbers are accurate. Is that what you're agreeing to do?
The numbers in the budgetary
Page
schedule.
9, top, the breakdown of the 130.
I did the math real quick, it articulates back to the report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we get back to the same numbers.
Right. So she's got the prior numbers and she don't throw them in, so all she's gonna do is take the other reports. I guess.
Robert, did you have comments?
I was just gonna say that the repayment of the COP is a number within the number as a whole. So in order for us to communicate that, if any questions arise, just like what you were saying, and that would be helpful for us to have that understanding, verification of it. I don't think that we're doubting that these numbers are incorrect.
No.
It's just to feel best about how we're able to communicate it. Right. Yeah.
In the prior meetings, though, we had several people, how do we know these numbers are accurate, looking at
Well,
what so that was.
It does raise the question that, at least to me, that is this 24, 34, 6903 spent for the COP, spent according to the bond language too, because they are actually being spent before the bond was issued. So do we want to concern about that or not?
So the authority related to the repayment of the COP is not only in the bond ballot language, so you can check the reference there, but it's also in a board resolution that gave the district authorization to pre-spend any bond proceeds that were received in January 24, and I believe that resolution is also in your packets.
I think it was still on the Measure T committee when I was on that, we had talked about the certificates, all that, so
There's a little,
at some point, we should probably just look at that section of the language and look at that and do it, because I remember there was a lot of, and I thought it was rather clever that they were able to do that, but that it's in the bond language and
it's in both
That's
the bond
legit, yeah.
language and the resolution. So the board passed the resolution, so November 2022 it passed. In January of 23, they approved a resolution for any back payments related to, that the district had spent on behalf of the bond to those pieces.
So we need to just find that in there and make sure that we know that that's what it is,
Yeah, that
because
we need to provide.
otherwise we're gonna have somebody from
It's
the public
actually
in
in
here
your documents.
claiming that that wasn't in the advertisements when the bond was promoted, you know?
Sure.
It wasn't the language.
So we can provide both the reference in your bond language that I think you all have copies of, and
Great.
just highlight where that is, and then a link to the board agenda where the resolution was
Perfect.
passed
Perfect.
that allowed the district to be able to pre-spend on the bond. I think those two pieces together would be helpful.
Perfect.
Okay.
So we're gonna be verifying that thing,
Yes.
not the auditor.
No,
Okay. I just wanna make sure who's
yeah, I
doing
don't
what.
think that it's
They're just
public
gonna,
information.
she's just gonna review it.
No, but just for paper trail purposes, I think it's good for you all to know, hey, if you had a question, did you know here you could watch this board meeting?
Right.
This is the resolution that was officially passed in January. Hey, here's the official ballot language. Let me highlight which page that authorization was made on. I think you all having that, I think is important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Alicia, you continue.
All right. We're gonna skip ahead to the.
Oh, sorry, I have one question on the same page.
Yeah.
Just high level, could you tell us what services and operating expenditures refers to? It's about $869,000.
Sure, so that's gonna be, any kind of, supplies, professional services, consultative services, anything that's not like a, construction-related cost, it falls in that bucket.
That includes the cheese and the brownies.
Not really, we promise. It excludes the cheese and the brownies.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. I'm gonna skip over all the way to page 16, which is the important part of our performance audit opinion. So the performance audit is the compliance audit that's required by the state and by Proposition 39 every year. So this is where we're not looking at the financial statements, but we're looking at the money that the district spent for Measure PCC, and to ensure that that's not only in line with state regulations, but also in line with the ballot measure. And almost all the way down the page, we talk about our sample. So of the 17.6 million spent on costs for Measure PCC this year, we audited 15.6, so about 88%. We found no instances of non-compliance. And then if you turn to the next, or 2 pages over page 18, there's a nice big blank page. And you can draw a smiley face or a nice picture on there. That means that we had no findings and recommendations associated with Measure PCC. So that is always a good thing. So in summary, you got a clean, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, a clean, unmodified opinion for the compliance with Measure PCC with no findings and recommendations.
Can you talk about why only 88% is represented in the expenditures?
Sure. So 88% is actually a very high sample size. We do not provide 100% assurance. An audit is based on risk and samples, so we always take a sample of the population that we're looking at, and so this one just happened to be 88%. It's not a specific target we're shooting for. It's just kind of what we ended up with at the end of the day, so that's why it's not 100%.
Great. So, I mean, with you guys not looking at 100%, is, I'm guessing 88% is a good number for you guys to look at, right?
It's pretty
Is
high.
that
You
right?
normally sample, you'll see somewhere, close to like 30-35%, so
Right.
88 is pretty high.
Great, thank you.
So follow-up question to Brandon's.
Sure.
Is that, the 80%, is that looking at 2C on page 16? We selected all expenditures that were individually significant expenditures, which were identified based on our assessment of materiality.
Sure.
What, generally speaking, what does materiality mean? What are the factors?
So
What makes an expenditure material?
yeah, it's based on the size of the bond project fund. So in this case, it's going to be based on that 17.6 million. So we have materiality tables that we have developed as a firm. They're in line with the auditing standards. And that's what we'll base our materiality on. Once we pull all the items that we deem to be material, then we'll go through and pull an additional sample of random items so that we're not just testing all of the big items. We want to test representative of the population, so we'll pull a sample of smaller items too, and that way we kind of get a good sample to look at.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So this is an action item. This is the presentation of the performance according to the bond language for the period we have in question. And it will be the basis for our annual report to the public, along with a narrative reconciling the total amount which we previously discussed. So is there a motion to accept this report?
Before we accept that, I have a question. Now that we have this draft report and it's all completed, what is the process after that?
Sure. So we will take this draft along with the district audit to the audit committee, the board audit subcommittee. From there, we will most likely finalize the report, which means we're going to sign and date it, probably early December. Then they'll be submitted to the state chancellor's office.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then just to confirm as well that the entire 130 will be a part of our annual report, the explanation that we were talking about before.
Correct. So I have here, there'll need to be a section in the annual report that gives a summary of the cost of issuance, which includes the issuance costs, like our bond counsel and the underwriter's fees, but also the repayment of the COPs. I think that would be a nice summary section that would account for the differences between what we see on the cost of issuance versus what the expenditures are. And then there will be narratives about the expenditure categories as a whole, like what projects is it mostly funding. It's interesting because it's not a large number of expenses yet, but it also may be, with your direction, would be even a foreshadowing of things to come. So typically the annual reports will give the summaries, a sort of general feeling of how you all think, not that the projects are going, but like what the funds are being used for, as well as usually just photos and things like that. But we may want to think through a foreshadowing of what we can expect in the next year, like the district is prepared, we are going to be starting architectural work on these various campus and things, to give sort of like what's coming next, so that we know in the next audit cycle what you all would be looking for. So that would be my recommendation, but I think it would be something, as you all looked through the various CBOC sites, there's very differing perspectives in terms of how different groups have expressed their annual report. So there's a lot of flexibility there for you guys. But I think this piece we would just have as a narrative, and then graciously thank you, Alicia, for offering to give us the courtesy of looking at that language and just make sure that it aligns.
Thank you. With that, I so move the report.
Brandon moves.
Do we need to approve that report if it's still in flux and being finalized? As you requested changes?
Well, subject to any modifications that the trustees make. Yeah, we need to accept it at some point. And we wanted, the idea was that we were going to do it now instead of later. That's why we're having a meeting now.
Okay, with that, I second.
So Brandon moved, and I think, did you second, Robin?
I did.
Robin seconded, Robin Navarro seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimously passed. Thank you. And the next item now is our expense report. And thank you very much, Alicia, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And I think that was clear and nice, and we got what we wanted, so good. And that is a large percent. I thought the sampling rate was going to be 5% or 10% or something like that.
Probably like 30.
Good.
You all enjoy the rest of your meeting. I'll look forward to your annual.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, we are on, in your book, on page 9. Yes, and so Candace, or Jesse, who's going to go through this?
This is just a quick sort of, we always want to share out what's been expended versus what our balance is. This is a
Right.
little bit, the timing is a little bit different because these are expenses are as of October 31st, 2024. So this is the latest expense data. So if you just sort of tally, you can see where there's some project spend on, the largest being, of course, our Rosemead site purchase. The district is currently working on RFPs for some of the architectural and design work for the new projects. And so as those go out to the field for procurement purposes and then awarded, then we'll see a lot of expenses in this next 2025 category. But these are the various projects to date and what's been spent on. If there are any specific questions about a particular line item, we would ask you all.
Well, we've beaten up on most of these pages
I
before,
think we have.
including mirror pools and this building and that building, and we've reviewed the facilities, revised facilities master plan. We've got, so are there any questions about any of the items on the pages here? We got this online, look at it, and there's nothing dramatic that I saw in it. But are there any new issues that we have?
Are we on track for the mirror pool to be completed by the end of
We are?
the school year?
Yes, we are. We've got a firm that's currently working. So Richard, myself, we had 2 representatives from the college interviewed 4 different construction firms to bid that project. And so we have sent out sort of like a tentative agreement to one of them and then asked them to confirm that they could make the 120-day timeline, which we received a response back that they could. What they are doing now is putting in sort of rough order of magnitude, like the guaranteed maximum price for that project. And they are scheduled to deliver that to the district on December 6th. And then that would be reported on our December 11th Board of Trustees agenda.
What is the scope of that project? I mean, I remember the trees and then, so
There's beautiful
that's
seating,
landscape,
landscaping. It's a refurbish, so we're not going to be replacing. It's kind of like a rehabilitation of the existing pools to kind of maintain kind of the historical aspect. But certainly an attention to native plants, new landscaping schemes, lots of seating out there. There currently isn't really functional seating where people can kind of sit and enjoy themselves. So there's new seating, new lighting options for the pools. So we're really excited. We expect that to be done around the May-June timeline before we get into graduation season of 2025.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there designs available online that
I was gonna write a note to myself. We actually have a YouTube fly-through of that project that I'll send out the group. Since I've got some other items that I'm gonna be sending you, I will be happy to include that as well.
Thank you.
That would be lovely.
Other questions or comments? If not, as a part of this report, is there anything interesting, Richard, Jesse, or Candace, that you would like to add to this report for our enlightenment, entertainment, or
Not to steal Richard's thunder, he's about to show you all what's going on. I think you might get some of that there.
No, I'm not sure if that was on their agenda.
No, this is, as it relates to any of the items on there in their broadest construction.
No, I think Candace kind of hit it. Our current project is finishing up Serafian for occupancy for the spring semester in February, and kicking off the mirror pools. A Sexton Auditorium, I guess, would be the only other one. We are currently pulling all the seats out of Sexton Auditorium, and we're on track to refurbish those seating and paint the auditorium also for the graduation. And that again will be being paid out of the bond. So you'll start seeing some more expenditures on Sexton Auditorium. The campus-wide paint project is a dual funded project. It's state scheduled maintenance and a little bit of bond money, but the majority of it was state scheduled maintenance. So those are the projects, and as Candace had pointed out, we're in the middle of procuring services for Rosemead. We're right now going through the selection process for the CEQA firm to go through on the new site that they go through, and they come up with a plan for Rosemead, city of Rosemead. And so, that's going on, and then we'll be securing the architectural firm for the Rosemead campus. So you're gonna start to see, as you look through this report, the next time you come through, you're gonna see some numbers changing on the front end and some more expenditures as we bring on our architects and engineers on the projects.
So Richard, I have a question about Sexton. I haven't been in Sexton for quite a while.
You're lucky you haven't been in.
But I think in passing, you mentioned something about those freezes on the left and the right, that they were cracking or they weren't going to be able to be saved, and I was just curious about that.
Oh, no, everything is,
All the
everything that was in,
historical-
yes. The only thing that is not in Sexton that we talked about at some point, we just didn't have time to research it. They actually took, when they put the organs in, to make the grills for the organs, they actually took out some of the plaster reliefs that are in the library, in the law library. They recast those and put those up on the wall, I believe.
Okay. So John Jacobs, one of our ceramics instructors, was very involved with recasting those. I didn't know if you knew that or not.
No, that was before my time.
Yeah, it was before your time, yeah.
Yeah, so we thought about maybe is there a way to reincorporate those, but this was such a fast track project, and we know there's other things to come. It was very important to get the seats reupholstered and put a fresh coat of paint and flooring in. So that's something that we can do independently of this project going forward.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Anything else? Certainly. Candace, anything further?
Outside of I think Richard hit it.
Related?
We're gonna see some new expenses in those particular two categories on your list.
Okay, thank you.
Let's say $40 million reserve, and then you mentioned there's some new things we're gonna see. Anything significant that's gonna take up any of the $40 million reserve?
Whose reserves? The district's reserves?
No, on
Fund 41, or?
I think it's a $20 to $40 million.
Yeah.
This piece
Yeah,
that hasn't been allocated.
Yeah.
So as Richard, I think the point that Richard is making, so this is just money that gets allocated to projects as we
Right.
get more. So the pieces on Rosemead, you'll see portions of this amount of money being allocated to projects, the Health and Sciences Building and the Student Services. The two first are Rosemead and the Health and Sciences Building. So portions of that 40 million will be budgeted then to those two particular projects. I could see also maybe some smaller work that's going on around campus to support some of the other areas being allocated out in 2025, but I would say those are going to be the two largest costs or allocations, I should say, because they're not expenses yet. We're just going to allocate the budget to it. Good question. Thank you, though.
From the student perspective, do they have any feedbacks or anything that they feel like might be urgent for them?
For the construction projects?
Yeah, for facility projects, like
Related-
the student, like maybe Tony or somebody from the student government, do they have any comments about like facilities and that kind of stuff that they may
I'm
feel?
sure they have comments about facilities, but if you want to be specific related to the bond, so as the Rosemead project gets spun up, our associated students will be very involved in kind of vision casting that alongside our instruction. So there's sort of like, you first have to sort of designate what is Rosemead gonna be, what is the focus center. So that comes from the instructional side.
Right.
So once they sort of tag it as they've had some current sort of conversations about it being business and technology related, then they will bring in students to kind of weigh in on the guided pathways paths that will then help them say, I'd love to see this here, or I'd love to see that there. I think we're still kind of early in the imagination stage before they can sort of say, I mean, it's sort of like, think what's in my mind at this point, but as soon as we get those awarded, We work really closely with Associated Students, so Alfredo, our student trustee is Irene. They meet with us regularly to sort of give us guidance on all things sort of student related. But these projects, they will play a role once we get those committees formed. They just haven't been formed yet.
Sounds good.
I have a question. Do we have anything in the ordinance that says anything about the construction, like all this construction happening about local contractors, like prioritizing local contractors and local hiring and stuff like that?
That's good. That's a good question because we're sort of hitting it from a variety of different angles. So the district is currently working on updating its board policies and administrative procedures related to, I'm always gonna mess this up, but it's SLEVI. It's local emerging veteran, and I'm gonna forget the
Starts with a small.
small. Thank you. See, I missed the S. So small, local, emerging, veterans-owned businesses. So we presented to the facilities board subcommittee about making some policy changes related to that, which is setting a district goal of it being 10%. That in the actual RFP process for those pieces, that up to 5% of the total sort of points that are awarded to the process can be related to that particular category. So we're really excited about that. That will go to the board's subcommittee policy meeting first, but we presented it at the facility subcommittee, so they were really excited about that. In addition, if you watch our August board meeting, there was some direction given, by our board of trustees to consider and enter into conversations about a community workforce agreement. And so the district is currently pursuing conversations related to that, which would also have those categories related to that. So that's a little slower going because there's a lot of sort of sit at the table, have some conversation, what's in, what's out. But we're excited to see sort of where that takes us as well. And so under the board's direction, our intention is to kind of get that in that early 2025. That's really for the construction portions of like with trades and skilled trades. And so we've got a little time to kind of work with them related to that agreement. So I feel like the district is hitting that from a variety of different angles to really showcase their commitment to local business.
Great. I think that's wonderful, especially local businesses and local hiring, employing our local people that live and work around here. So thank you for that.
Well, the contractor who may be awarded the contract for the mirror pools is a Pasadena-based company. So as soon as they get through sort of the hoops that they need to jump through, we expect to award that project on December 11th.
Thank you. Where, in that regard, where do we stand with regard to the PLAs, the project? Yes, some people wanted to enter into a project labor agreement.
So that's the new language around that is a community workforce agreement. Instead of calling it a project labor agreement, it's now called the community workforce agreement. So that's the reference I was making that.
And that basically locks us in though to all union labor, does it not?
It gives, there's some flexibility. So I think what we're currently working on with the district and our local partners about what's covered and what's not covered. And I think that those are the conversations that are happening right now. And then once that gets, decided upon, our board of trustees have been very involved in those conversations as well. But we expect to have a formal agreement in 2025.
But the project labor agreement thing has been a big deal, I think, isn't it, on the politics of the board and all that?
Sure, that they have definitely raised it as a priority.
And does that have a significant potential impact on the cost, to raise the cost?
I think that's a part of the evaluation cycle. And so as we're looking as to what that would look like, we would be giving information to our board for their consideration as well. I think it's still really early in terms of us understanding.
So they
what
haven't
that's gonna
really adopted that.
They
yet.
have not. They have just given direction to the superintendent, to Dr. Gomez, which he has then asked us to take a look at, and he's very involved in it as well. But right now, we are exploring what I could say confidently is our board is interested in creating a more cohesive relationship with skills trade. They have asked us to figure out what ways would best suit that. So whether it's by projects, maybe there are certain projects that'll go into the, because there's a variety of different ways to accomplish a CWA, and so that's what we're exploring at this point, or what are all the various ways to accomplish it, and then what makes the most sense for the district. So that's the investigation phase that we're currently in.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, it's not a question. When it comes to the energy management system, it mentions the rules, the expenses that we used for already in the book over here, but what has the expenditure be dedicated to so far for the campus?
Richard, do you want to take that one?
I'm
The
sorry.
EMS, it's okay.
What has the expenditure been dedicated to so far in the campus when it comes to energy management systems?
The 732,000.
Yeah, that was the C building is what we had expended on that. So that was the controls for C building.
Which just allows us to control sort of the energy remotely from different areas. One of the key projects I think that facilities is really excited about is the new electric heaters in the E building.
Yes, we replaced the gas-fired boiler in the E building that failed with the electric.
A lot of students have been advocating for more environmental adaptations of the energy system before. So when they were doing that, I just realized that the administration that pulls through and gets it done have pretty much a thankless job. So I just want to show my appreciation for that.
Yeah, could we be sure we make a note of the minutes of Tony's remarks, because they're on behalf of the students and environmental factors.
Our next project, which we're going to go off and plan, is for CC and ITV building controls. Those are to bring them up to the new platform that we can actually control them from a dashboard. So that's the next one.
And I will give hats off also to Tony. Tony has also been participating. So I mentioned the new facilities newsletter. So we've been doing the students, the sustainability team student group on campus, as well as our core group, which is our, I'm always going to get their name wrong. So community overcoming recidivism through education. So core has been partnering with the sustainability team and Richard's groundkeeping team to landscape this area right outside of the sea, and so it's all drought tolerant and native plants. So you'll see that as a part of one of the stories in our next newsletter that I think is really cool, because I think it also speaks to this larger, how can we work together to do this really important work.
So I have a question with regard to the students, and what temperatures we run the building in. My grandson's a graduate student at UC San Diego, and when he comes up on the weekends to stay at our house, even during the heat of the summer, I keep my thermostat at 74 or 75. He turns it down to 68, and he told me that UCSD keeps the thermostats between 67 and 68. Of course, La Jolla, that's not that hard. But he's rarely very opinionated, but he told me that student learning is vastly benefited by cooler temperatures. So what temperatures do you keep the classrooms at here?
We're about in the same range, because what happens is it's too hard to catch back up once you get a thermal load.
So you do keep them low?
Yeah, we keep them relatively low.
68?
About in that area.
Son of a gun.
Yeah, and so, because what will happen is all of a sudden you'll bring in 40 bodies, and we can't recover that fast on a hot call, right?
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen is the rooms are at that temperature. I don't know if it enhances learning. I'll defer. It may, if you were too hot, maybe you get disengaged, so.
Any further? If not, can we have a motion to accept the management report which is as of, this is 10/31?
I just have one quick question.
Is that a motion?
As a campus, are we moving towards leads?
So it'll
Because we are
depend, our
energy
board
management.
is going to give some guidance related to that, and they have not done so yet. So we're figuring out, we're talking with our instructional folks about STARS certification. So they've been really doing, so that's an integrated sort of facilities approach with the instructional side of the house. That's what we've decided to pursue first. And then we'll then make some declarations as to what the future buildings will be certified at. But that has not been made yet.
Now, Justin, I'm going to ask for a motion. And if you ask another question,
Sorry.
the foundation's going to have to fork over another $30 million from what Nancy's got. So, okay. Okay, is there a motion to accept the management report?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Good. All right. So that motion was by Mary Ann, seconded by Larry. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimously passed. Thank you. Now we will go on to proposed future agenda items, and the one that I would like to ask is, we have been promised and would really like to get an early, slightly before the,
Grand opening.
the public gets in there. I'd like to get our tour offered at some point.
We'll get that scheduled.
And even maybe if it's not, if maybe we can do it before we even have our next meeting, if there's a time that we could do it. Is there a way that we can arrange that?
Probably designated a next meeting date.
Well, let's do that.
We
Let's
can do
look
that
at the
and
meeting
then-
date. Normally, if we waited, but the time the audit report is done, it goes to the chancellor and is finally approved, and I imagine we're going to have to, what should we do in terms of drafting our report? We got a lot of examples, and we can start probably formatting something. And do we have anybody, we can form a subcommittee of this, couldn't we, to help work on that draft?
You could, and we could use district resources to kind of help produce that report. So we're happy to provide sort of graphic and design sort of layouts related to that. We're happy to help with drafting some content. We do understand you all may have other jobs to do, or this may not be your primary focus, and then send that for your edits.
So is there anybody here on the committee that would like to work on a subcommittee to work on the draft or report? Okay, Lawrence. Anybody else? Okay, I'll join Lawrence and we can work with Candace to kind of get a draft. And so I don't think we would probably be, by the time the chancellor's report gets in and all that's done, we would be when? Sometime in February, I imagine? Or would we be able to do it before that, Candace?
That's what I was just confirming with Jesse. So it would probably make sense to pick a January date, so that as we're working through the sort of draft together, that then this group could see it, and if any adjustments need to be made, another meeting could be scheduled. But it does need to be improved in that February timeframe, so my recommendation is sort of third week or fourth week of January.
I was hoping for late January.
Yeah, give us a little time to get some things together.
Okay, so let's look at late January. Let's see, I guess we don't want to do it on the 20th, do we, Inauguration Day? The week of you want to do it the How about the week of,
Is that for you guys to meet or for us to meet?
I think for you all, I
For
mean,
all of
I
us.
think Dr. Opel, Larry, and the internal folks will probably work through email, maybe have a one-time on-site prior to that point, but I think the goal would be having to this body a draft of that annual report at the end of January.
so how about the week of the 13th, or the week of the 20th, or the week of the 27th?
The week of the 27th, that's for me. Primarily the 29th and 30th.
29th and 30th, and so, you're probably gonna be going out for Lunar New Year on
No,
Wednesday.
the same one.
So, how about January 30th? How does that fit with every, now, we did, I can't remember, Alan,
What his dates were,
what his dates were, do you remember?
I don't.
He's a valuable member of our committee, and is any day okay that week? Any of the days that week? Or any of you prefer one or prefer not one?
The 27th would work better for me on that Monday.
Yeah, I prefer to avoid the 30th if we can, but 27, 28, 29.
Okay, 27,
But if it has
28,
to be 30, I'll live with it.
27, 28, 29.
27, 28 work for me.
Pardon me?
27, 28 work for me.
27, 28.
27,
Yeah.
28 works for me too.
Okay.
28 won't work for me.
Pardon me?
28 won't work for me. We're not.
27.
27 is fine. 27 or 30 is okay.
Okay, did,
So, 27.
We make it work based on what
okay,
you guys need.
everybody like the 27th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tentatively, yeah.
So Dr.
Okay.
Opel, you did mention Alan, he did say that he will be out, or he's here in Pasadena from November 22nd to January 9th, and then again from February 28th to April 6th. So I know that that doesn't work in terms of our timing. What we could offer for him would be, there is under the Brown Act, as long as, if he's willing, he can join us remotely, but he'd have to post where he is. He'd have to go through, we can give
Okay,
him
would you
some
let him know that
instruction.
and tell
I
him that
will.
we did take into account his schedule?
We did.
But okay.
Yeah, he's only available up until January 9th, so.
So let's see if we can get him to join us that
Another
way
way,
according to
yeah.
the rules. And then let's set it for January 27th
Okay.
At 5:30?
at 5:30. And can we proceed that? You think we can have a tour of the building before that?
Yes.
I would recommend that. I think you will have a far better tour then than now, because furniture will be coming in about the second week of January. Otherwise, think about going to a model home that's staged versus.
And when is the formal opening?
Second week of February.
Okay, so
We're
we'll be
gonna do like an official ribbon cutting first week or
Okay,
something.
that works out well
like
then. So can we put down that we'll do that on the,
In mid-January? Do you
well,
want
we
it,
can
would
do
you
it,
like us
do it
to?
before the meeting on the 27th.
Okay,
Maybe do it at
At 5 o'clock, is that?
4:30 or
Sure.
something, well,
Whatever.
I mean,
Well,
it took us a good 45 minutes
Yeah, I
to
would
get.
say that for.
let's set it for 4:30.
Okay.
Wait, on 27 at 4:30,
Yeah,
I won't be able to make it as a scholarship committee, PCC scholarship committee until
I'm
5:30.
sure we'll miss you.
Yeah. I can do it after.
If you're putting enough money into the furnishings from the foundation, I'm sure you'll get a look anyway.
So 4:30.
4:30.
Sounds good.
4:30, we'll have the tour, and then anything else special you want for the agenda, we'll have Larry working with Candace, me, and we'll have hopefully a draft for the agenda, so a first draft, or a format, something about, at least a table of contents.
Words on a page.
A table of contents, not necessarily the text, but maybe even that, as much as we can get together for group, and we'll have that for you to look. But I think we have, most people don't get those reports out till much, much later, right?
No, but, I mean, this is our first,
We
so.
should do it, yeah. And then the other thing is, I think the question, Robin, you had a question earlier before the meeting started. We were just talking about how long people's terms were. And the terms, everybody's terms started in '23. We have 2-year terms, and are those renewable for a year or?
They are, so we will be sending you, Dr. Opal, sort of like a schedule, like how to just recast folks in their role. Some folks have had to roll off of the committee because they've moved out of the area, so
Right.
we're working with the trustees.
But
related to that.
for the people who were on from the beginning, our actual start date was when? It was sometime in '23, I
I
think.
want to say that for the very first meeting, which is in '23, was our starting point.
But it's when we were appointed, you said.
Yeah, but that, I feel like the January of that year is when you guys were full. I have to go back to the board
23.
agenda.
So where, if we were on for '23 officially in '24,
Uh-huh. We're right at that point
we're
where we
right
gotta
there, so-
reappoint you all.
So can we add to the agenda to,
Yeah,
you know,
a reappointment.
committee membership?
Yep.
Yeah, and terms and all that.
Yep.
Right. And then, anything else for the agenda? Okay. We want some of the same high-quality cheese, brownies, and iced tea in the depths of winter. Okay.
At the district's cost.
You have a list of the resources there, and we have everything else. Is there any other business related to things we've had on the agenda that we might have overlooked? We can't,
Dr.
have any
Opal,
new business.
may I make a comment really
Yeah,
quickly
sure.
about one of your early conversations about the minutes? So I appreciate everyone's, like all the adjustments, so we'll make those adjustments. We'll certainly go back to the webpage and make sure that each of the recordings of all of the meetings are there. I thought that was a really great suggestion, so we'll make sure that we do that. The minutes are intended to be sort of a high level of like what was discussed. They are not transcripts, nor are they intended to be transcripts. So recording who said what or who asked what is a little bit outside of what the intention of the minutes are supposed to reflect. That's the reason why we have the recordings of the official meetings. So I just wanted to make that clarification as to why they don't say who said what. There's just sort of general, there was a discussion related to the plan, the community raised questions about a building, you know, so that in an effort now, since we'll be posting the recordings, that then people can go back and relive the actual recordings themselves. So I just wanted to sort of,
Right.
they are modeled after the Board of Trustees minutes.
And that is around
Yes,
there.
thank you.
I just want to make a comment. I want to say thank you for putting the page numbers on here. So thank you very much, because that made it easier for us to find it. Because the last time we're like,
It definitely.
where's it at? So that, thank you, appreciate it.
I will pass it on to Lizette. She does a good job about that. Or was it Lynette?
Lizette.
Oh, Lizette did that.
Yeah.
Okay. Liz, we have a Lynette who's an accountant.
Okay. Well, thank you, staff, for being here for us, and thank you, members, all for coming. Thank you for additional member of the public coming. I appreciate you being here, and we are 4 minutes early, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Brandon. Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's approved. And
Anytime you need the motion to adjourn, let me know.